do their roll call. Commissioner Pop,
Present.
Commissioner Gozar,
Here.
Commissioner Jones here. Will the city of Laramie please call roll? County Clerk, can you call the roll, please? Ready or do you want me? Foley? Absent, Free?
Here.
Blocker?
Here.
Newman?
Here.
Majority? Here. Shumley?
Here.
Beagle? Here. Richardson? Here. Shumley, or excuse me, Cumby? Here. We have 8 present and 1 absent. Dr. would you please call your roll?
For Rock River, I have my town clerk, Jody Newkirk, a council member, Everett Summers, and my chief water operator, Rick Strickland, and myself, CJ Leslie, the mayor.
Thank you. Will we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible.
I know that. I'm trying to get back to Zoom.
Do we have any comments from the public, either online or in the room?
I hate when that.
Any comments from the public this evening, online or in the room? Hearing and seeing none, we'll close the public comments. Item 4, purpose of the meeting and brief overview of the specific purpose excise tax. Tracy.
We have no video on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commission? Oh, it's not on. I'm used to having push the buttons. All right. My presence is everywhere around me. Good evening, council. Council, appreciate everybody coming today. Part of our purposes here is to define what our total initial the ballot is going to be for all 3 entities.
We're gonna try and
decide
see what
that
we can do.
so we can kind of start working backwards to figure out what kind of projects we can each forward. Reviews process. We'll talk about the timeline and various options. Kirk White, he does have information on what various elections look like. And Director May will go over some of her forecasting options as well. In my handout, I'm not going to do this word for word, number for number, because it'll take too much time. But I did want to put the definition by statute in there for what the specific purchase tax is for. Also, below that, you'll see the specific purpose tax history. I believe Director Wade did a good job going back to 2001 when she presented on Wednesday the 20th. However, I was able to find back to 1989 and what some of the specific purposes were back from that date. Next is the specific purpose tax summary. This is where I track monthly of how much the ballot amount is, how much we've collected for each entity, and kind of where I am guesstimating, and I'm trying to guess in that word because it really is a guess. There's a lot of variables that can happen between now and then. But my best guess right now is that we would be fully collected in May of 2026.
Could you slide that up and maybe also enlarge it? Thank you.
There we go. Those are the numbers I was discussing. The estimate that I'm showing is based on solely on averages, not forecasting on any economic factors or anything like that. We would be fully collected on this specific purpose tax in May. I do need to work also with the Department of Revenue on those calculations. I next have the collections in this chart. Nancy, if you could go to this page here, please. This is just this specific purpose tax that we have right now, the collections by month. And you can see there are a number of outliers in there. December of fiscal year 24 and also February of fiscal year 25. Those coincide with wind energy in our county. Watching them work on the projects and hearing them through our assessment office goes out to assess the counties, and we can see them working, putting up towers, doing constructing roads and those types of things. The next chart does show our fiscal year 25 sales tax by major code. The major codes, these are the different categories of businesses within our counties that submit sales tax to the Department of Revenue. You can see the big one is utilities. That includes, as you'll see below, power generation and supply, water, sewage, and other systems, and natural gas distribution. The part we don't know is whether that is wind power generation or wind power creation. And there's not a way that we can get reported for that information, unless Department of Revenue or the company self-report. But you can see there's the next big collection area we have is the retail trade in Laramie. And that's all of our businesses, Walmarts, and other things that contribute. And just as a comparison, I included, if you could go to the next page, please, Nancy. I included the last 3 years since the online sales have been taxed. So fiscal year 20, 21, and 22. On the retail trade, for an annual total is 12 million, and 1 month of wind generation energy gave us 6 million. These are why our collections are coming in so briskly, and we're going to be paying this off earlier than the 10 to 12 years that was originally planned. The last thing I want to discuss, because it was brought up in the city council meeting by one of your business owners in town. What happens if this is paid off for the businesses? Yes, you will change your rates, but there'll be a notification process with the Department of Revenue. So after it's paid off, you can't just shut every business off in the county on that day. So there'll be a time frame where we notify them, and then it goes to the next quarter. And every business owner that collects sales tax would be notified by the Department of Revenue. It appears that we might have a gap in the collections where we would drop down to the 5%, which we have done before. I believe it was when we went from the 2001 to the 2010 specific purpose tax. It does have some good factors. I know in the treasurer's office, we saw an uptick in purchasing vehicles at 5% sales tax rather than the 6%. But keep in mind, if you bought it in February, the rate didn't change until April, you're going to pay the 6% from February. But that's all I have. I just want to keep it brief so we can have more discussions. Any questions I would be happy to entertain.
Tracy, could you just emphasize that it comes off quarterly and would have to go wait until the next quarter to come back on?
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So the tax rate will not change unless it's on a quarter. And if there's a November election, for instance, we would notify them. December is only 1 month to the next quarter, so it'd be the following quarter of April, because it has to be greater than that time. The vendors need time to change their systems. All right.
Thank you, Tracy. Item 5 is election timeline for Kayla.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Mayor of Town of Rock River, and council members and commissioners. Thank you for having me here this evening. In front of you, you should have an election calendar. I have drawn up two calendars, one for May, one for August. Of course, if we have an election in May, it's going to be a special election. It will be the only question on the ballot. Therefore, it'll be short. It'll be nice, but the timeline is pretty short. As you can all see, we probably have to have our draft ballot language in around December, January, early this year. By the first meeting in February, I think we need to have our resolutions approved by all three entities. Mid-February, we're going to be coding that ballot. By February, between February 4th and February 24th is the first and last day we have to publish the proclamation for our election, basically give election notice. We do have to have an official test, just like it is a regular election. Of course, I'll have to have election judges. And then March 20th is when the first date that ballots would go out. It's a pretty short timeline. April 7th would be the first day for absentee ballots to be mailed. And then we need to publish our sample ballots on April 21st. First day and then the last day would be 4th, and then our election day would be May 5th. So I guess my question would be for the council and for commissioners and for the town of Rock River. You guys, as the body that approves this, will decide whether we have a May or August election. So I'm just giving you options and what that looks like. Yes, Sarah.
So if April 7th is the first day for absentee ballots to be mailed, and then April 21st is the first day to publish sample ballots, when you have sample ballot, and
It's the first day to publish it. So, of course, you have the 45 days is March 20th. That's when your UOCAV ballots, your military notice ballots have to go out by law. And then your first day to mail the ballots is April 7th. It's at 28 days outside of the election. And by statute 226105, your first day to publish the sample ballots and the last day to publish them is within that time frame. So yes, it is after when people already get ballots. It's the one that gets published out in the newspaper. Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. And then, like I said, election day would be May 5th. We would have our post-election audit and our canvass on May 7th, and then I would certify those election results after the canvass. Do we have any questions on the May election? Okay. Councilor Authority.
What's the approximate cost of a special election or a regular election, say the primary?
Well, primary is going to be more, obviously, because you have more measures on the ballot. But I budgeted about $15,000. That's between printing and ballots. The hard thing is that you have no idea what your turnout's going to be. So to try to figure out how many ballots to print, how many polling places to have, how many judges to have. Of course, we would look at consolidating polling places, which works out for our poll books because we have that ability to do that. But I think I budgeted $15,000. So that would be an extra cost that would be for between the three entities.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. My question would be, if there's any historical precedents for May elections versus August and voter turnout, and can we use any data to kind of quantify or have a lot less folks voting on this than we do in May versus August?
Your turnout is always usually less on a special election, and I think there will be, my fear is a little bit of voter confusion. You're going to have an election in August, and then you're going to have a special election in May. With the new residency requirements, it's that added stress on the judges. The people have to be registered 30 days prior to the election, and then they're going to get confused that maybe they can't vote in August. I tried to look back. Most special elections are held outside of a regular election year. So this is obviously a little bit different because we would be in the thick of, obviously, we'd be a week out from filing for office for the August election.
Thank you. My question is, once this Is somebody, there will be over collections. What happens with the over collections?
That would be a good question for our company treasurer, who is coming up here right now. Dr. Better stand here together. We did this up. Yes, we do. Thank you, Councilor Shumway, for the question. The over collections would come in just the same as the current collections do now, and get distributed per the ballot amounts as they. But I do believe there's a holding period of 1 year, if I remember correctly from statute, to allow for refunds on from the Department of Revenue for taxes.
This isn't a question, but to try and make this move more smoothly because it's a weird setup. As long as people are courteous, if you have a question, if you just go ahead and ask the question, they gotta make it go a little bit more smoother.
Are there any more questions on the May election? Okay, so on the back of that sheet, of course, I have the August election calendar. March 1st is when we want to have our draft ballot language together. By the second meeting in April, we would want to have our resolutions approved by all three entities. We'd be coding our ballots around May 1st. May 9th is the first day to publish the proclamation. The last day is May 19th. The nice thing about if we do it in August, of course, that proclamation will be with all of the, there'll be one proclamation for the August election, so it will be with the regular election proclamation. We would do our official test of election ballots between June 15th and June 18th. And then the first day for our UOCAVA ballots to go out would be July 2nd. First day for absentee ballots to be mailed would be July 21st, and that would be when we start early voting. First day to publish our sample ballots, the last day is August 4th through August 17th, and then August 18th would be election day. And then we have our post-election audit canvas August 20th, and then we would certify our results upon our campus. So those are the two options that I put forward in front of you. I don't think a decision needs to be made this evening, but I definitely think this will really forge the way in how we move forward, because I think there's going to have to be a lot more notification if we look at doing an election, because we're looking at, before the end of the year, we're going to have our draft ballot language together. So I'll let you guys as council members and commissioners and town council decide when that needs to be decided. Hopefully sooner than later for my purposes, that would be okay, but if there's not any more questions on an August election. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you.
Item 6, discuss strategies for evaluating and improving tax amount. Jennifer Wade. Thank you, Jennifer.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and members of the Rock River Town Council. I was asked for the presentation this evening just to pull together some forecasts for what a potential maximum amount of tax could look like, using some of the assumptions that have been historically normal over time. I also have been careful to prepare a list of scenarios for your consideration in case you decide to modify the term of the tax. And so I've tried to prepare this information in a way that it will be useful to you as elected officials as you determine the amount, the term, and the term of this tax. So first, I'll wait until the city clerk has pulled up the slides that we'll be referencing, which looks something like this for everyone in the audience and commissioners. Nancy, thank you for doing such a good job tonight. I know it can be a little hard. So as she's pulling that up, I'll speak generally about the decisions you'll be making. For some of you, this is an old hat, you're well aware of these decisions. For other new folks, we want to make sure that we get some education out there and just talk about this tax in general. So the term, historically, around a 10-year term has been planned. When the governing bodies met and recommended the tax in 2018, at that time, a 10 to 12-year estimate was used. In my presentation to the City Council last week, I did emphasize that these are forecasts, and as you know, there's no certainty 100% in an economic forecast. And so, and the way I think about this is maybe what you're considering is the amount of risk involved in the forecast that you choose to rely on. And I'll be very careful this evening to make sure that I point out what I view as the risk in each of the forecast options that I have provided to you this evening. So in addition to the term, how long you would like the estimated tax to run, you will be deciding on recommending an amount. And the amount and the term really go hand in hand because we have the amount of collections we might expect during that time. We also want to consider future growth when we're thinking about this tax because 10 years is a long time to assume that no growth happens at all. If you listen to the first work session from 2018, inflation and this growth was talked about quite a bit. And so I wanted to just put on the table this evening that the growth factor I used in my forecast was 2.3% per year, which is the Federal Reserve break-even rate. And I've actually provided a link to where I got that break-even rate later in the publication, later in the handout, in case any of you want to go reference that information.
It is, just so you know, it is sharing on Zoom.
Please.
It's just, for whatever reason, we can't get it to transfer over to the screen.
So for our online attendees, I want to make note that I am moving to the second slide in my presentation and for members of the room. So on this slide, you'll see two graphs that, to me, were the big changes that have happened since the 2018 tax was determined. The first major change, and I'm not even going to talk about wind energy because we know that that's not expected to be ongoing forever. These are more ongoing changes. The first is the taxation of online sales. And so if you look at the chart, you can see that the taxation of online sales started late in 2019 and grew every year thereafter. And it really has climbed in 2024 and 2025. These collections for sales and use taxes are ongoing collections. So they are not like wind energy where we know maybe we have a couple more years when they're going to go away. We can rely on some of these. What you will notice in my forecast, however, is many of my forecasts don't count the highest values of these as a way to be conservative. But I just want to point out that our base for sales and use tax collections is much higher in our counting than has been normal because of these collections from online sales. Secondly, the purchasing power of the dollar has really changed since the last tax was adopted. And so I went back and looked at the inflation calculator from 2010 to 2018. Inflation grew by about 16% during that period. From 2018 to present, it's grown by about 28%. And so we're looking at about a 12% difference in the purchasing power of the dollar over this tax, which is significant. If you're looking at the growth in also collections from sales and use taxes, because as the cost of goods go up, so does what you're collecting from sales and use taxes. And so I want to make sure I caution you that inflation happens normally. 16% was the number for that last planning period. 28% is the number for this planning period. And so let's just make sure we're dealing with that incremental change and not thinking 28% is the total amount of change that we're working with. So we'll move on to the next slide, and you'll see that I present the first of a few options for a 10-year tax. The next slide, which we'll look at in just a minute, presents these same options to you in an 8-year term and a 12-year term. But on this slide, we're going to talk really about the assumptions behind these forecasts, so that you can understand what goes into these numbers. The first forecast assumption is taking the median collections from the current SPET, taking that as a base, and then assuming that that base is what we collect in year 1 of the next SPET, which is already conservative, and then using a 2.3% growth rate for collections after that. If you were to use that forecast and decide on a 10-year term, your total tax amount would be around $86 million. The second forecast uses average collections from 2020 to 2022, which is the period before we started seeing a lot of collections from wind energy, using actual inflation on that base for the remainder of the current SPET, and then inflating it from there to grow for 2.3% per year. That forecast would result in a tax of around $89 million for a 10-year term. Council members, you will notice that number is about $3 million off what I gave you on last Wednesday. That's because I took a look at that forecast a second time and just dialed it back just a little bit. Still both very conservative numbers, and either could have been here, but I felt more comfortable with $89 million. The next forecast is the most aggressive. It would use average tax collections for the entire current SPET. And as you know, that would result in you assuming that the wind energy collections that we have experienced in the last few years would continue for the next SPET. Now, some of them will continue, but I don't know that we have a good sense of exactly how much. So I will advise you, this is an aggressive forecast in my opinion, the least likely to collect in a 10-year term, and would result in a tax of around $97 million. The last option is not as much of a forecast as equating to current dollars. And so I said, well, what if that last tax of $65.6 million was a benchmark of some kind for our governing bodies? And what if they just wanted to know what inflation has done to that number since the last tax was considered by voters? And so if we take and just apply inflation to that tax, we would be at a tax of around $84 million. And so what I'm presenting to you this evening are really just a set of options based on different forecasts that might help you determine the total tax amount. So I just spoke with you about a 10-year term. If we look at the next slide, what I've done is I've actually taken those same 4 forecasts, which I've talked to you about, and given an 8-year term, the 10-year term we just discussed, and a 12-year term, just to help you as you're discussing, so that you have some different scenarios right before you. That concludes the information I had ready to discuss with you this evening, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, just one that. We don't have to set the term on the ballot, right? This is just when it gets paid off, the term is on.
Through you, Chair. That's correct. You're setting an amount, but I think in the past, the conversations, the term has been something that's been discussed, and so that's why I'm giving you that.
Anyone online have questions? Is there any more questions in the room?
Can we
Thank
spot
you.
Commissioner Gosar online?
We lost him in the room. Hold on. Reloading.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 7, overview of bonding and other considerations. What? Come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Governing bodies, pleasure to be here again to talk to you about the 1% specific purpose tax. I had a good fortune of working on 5 of your 1% specific purpose tax dating go back to 1989, dare I say. How long I've been around doing some of this. I remember that the 1989 tax was, I want to say, for the territorial prison and for the criminal justice facility. So one of the first ones. My firm, my experience, we're municipal advisors. So we work with cities, towns, governments, schools, hospitals, and we help them facilitate the financing needs, whether that's through bonds or 1% specific purpose tax finances. Interestingly, 1% specific purpose tax began clear back in the first one was in 1985. The governing bodies in Teton County wanted to figure out a way to help get the people who are impacting their facilities, primarily their jail, find a way to help tourists pay for it. So they came up with implementing 1-cent sales tax, and they actually passed the first one and used that sales tax to build and construct their jail and people. But going back since you passed successful elections back in 1989, 97 for 1, 10, and 18. To your question about the election dates, 2 of those elections have been held in May, and the other 3 have been in August. So there has been some precedence for reducing those days. I honestly can't remember if those fell on election years or not when we held those in May. But it has been done. If you look at those voter results, you really can see that the turnout's not as good at those special elections. And there can be arguments made both ways for that. You have it in May, and if you can maximize your yes voters for your project, then certainly maybe it's going to have it in May. But there is the monetary considerations in having an election when there's nothing else out there and costs with that. As you begin and you think about this process, I think one of the most critical elements that you need to include, and you've done a great job of this in the past, is including the language that you need in your ballot question itself. You're going to identify a specific dollar amount of your projects that you're going to approve. Identify those projects. You're not putting a time frame, because the tax will be in effect for however long it takes to collect. You're going to set a specific dollar amount. Okay? And in doing that, you need to also include the necessary language that would allow you to finance those projects if you want. In the past, and in the most recent election, all of the Rock River County and the city, we included general obligation bond language. So everyone was able to actually issue general obligation bonds, which technically you can repay those bonds through a property tax. We've never had to do that. We rely upon the sales tax to repay that. But what that language allowed all of the entities to do was to finance those projects at a lower cost than they would have if they were only relying upon the sales tax to stuff. They call it a double barrel bond. So you've got both the geo pledge and the sales tax to repay it. You never had to go and implement a levy to repay those sales taxes. Always done in ahead of schedule to do that. So I think that's really critical. Just make sure you've got the right language in the ballot question to allow you to do that, whether it's geo bonds and or these payments. I wish I could throw out a magic percentage to you as far as if you got a $1 million project and you want to finance that project rather than wait the 10 years to collect it, a number that you would tack onto that. It's really difficult not knowing right now how many of the projects really need some of that upfront funding. Not all of them will. Invariably, there might be some equipment needs that is included on this ballot, and so maybe that need is going to be 3 or 4 years from now. But the rule of thumb, you're going to want to increase the percentage of your project by a certain factor. I mean, that number might be 10%, that might be 15%. And you do that to allow that difference is really for interest components. Okay, to allow you to issue bonds up front that you're going to begin your project today rather than 10 years from now. And then as that sales tax is collected on that time frame, use those monies as they come in to make those tax payments. So I think as we get closer, I'm actually happy to help run some of those scenarios. We pin down what those numbers can be like we have in the past. But right now it's, you know, it's just difficult to say since we really don't know where the final dollar is. So, looking through, you know what, I always get asked the question, well, how much should we issue? What is the total dollar amount? But again, there's no right or wrong answer to that as well. It really is driven by what your needs are and your respective needs and what you can sell. So you've done a good job in the past going out and talking to your voters about your need for these various projects. And, you know, looking at the voting results here from past elections, and, you know, you can tell it's been done well. You've done a lot of the education to make it happen. This last election was 6,300 for, 1,400 against. So pretty sizable. And I honestly, I was surprised that it passed like it did when we were working on this back in 2017, because it just seemed like such a big number at the time. 65 million. Wow. 10 years, it just seems like forever. Like, I won't even be working there, you know? And here I am. So, you know, take those things into consideration when you get together and talk about this. You know, 9.8 years sounds better than 10. You know, it just some of those little things matter when you're talking about going out and talking to the voters about why you need this. Any questions? You have to try to answer. Yes, sir.
Do all the entities involved in this conversation enjoy about the same credit rating?
Oh, I think Rock Rivers might be slightly different. You know, and
I know you mentioned 4% Laramie.
right. So, Fisher, you're referring to the interest rate at which we could borrow the money right now. You know, that on the last one in 2018, where rates were fantastic, we locked in 10-year financing, you know, in the 2% range. It was a great rate at the time. We're not quite there right now. You know, if we were looking at issuing debt, we'd probably be in that 4% range. I don't think Rock River would be that far different from that. And I say that because what's repaying Rock River's debt is the same that's going to be repaying the city of Laramie than Albany counties. They're relying upon that county-wide sales tax to repay that. And so that does factor into their ability to borrow.
This might be a silly one, but does each entity have the ability to bond, or if we bond, it's going in together, the bond?
Each entity has the ability to finance their own projects. You have to look at what those underlying projects are to determine where they would fall under that bonding qualification process. Some of those may not fit under a general obligation, you know, a general purpose general obligation bond issue. So you really have to look at what that project is to see where it falls. And I think that goes back to making sure you have the language in there where if it doesn't fall under a general obligation bond, you have the lease payment language in there, so you can still finance it, but maybe not under a general obligation bond.
I think it's a follow-up question about the debt though, then on that bond. So if the bond was for a county project or for a city project, for example, would the debt be to the city? Would the debt be to the three entities together? I would assume just to the city, but it's a city bond.
Correct.
Making sure on that, okay.
Yes, that is correct. As an example, last time, the city issued general obligation bonds for their projects. The airport, the county sort of took them under their wing at that time, and they were public county general obligation bonds for the benefit of the regional airport. And their bonding fell under your debt, or under the county's debt limitation, so it impacted their ability to issue GO bonds.
Thank you for that.
You bet. Anything else?
Are there any questions in the room or online? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Item 8 is discussion and question. Item 8 is discussion and questions. Discussion. And I know that any of the people that came on to poll will be happy to answer questions if you have. Please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was thinking the advantage of the August election is that a lot of the discussions with citizens happen during Freedom Has a Birthday. And we also have the opportunity to do that at the farmer's market. So to me, that's one reason to stick with the August. The other reason is our clerk will be having to get ready to deal with all the candidates filing and all that stuff. So I feel like it's a lot to put on the clerk's office.
I do agree with Councilor Doherty that an August time does allow us opportunity to be out in the public and answering questions and getting messaging out. So I think it may not only allow clerk's office a more reasonable time, save some money from the election. It would be nice to get the money early. I think it also allows us time to properly engage with the public.
I have to agree with Council Doherty and Cumby on August, or that the August might not be our best choice, and to do one election in 1 year is a better choice than trying to do two. And I can just see an absolute strain on everyone and how we can try to do that. So very much sense. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'm going to agree too. Just, one of the big topics as of late is transparency in the public and public engagement. So this gives us the opportunity, like we talked Freedom Has a Birthday, but also farmers markets. It gives us a lot more opportunity to talk to the public, have them ask questions, versus in the spring, everybody's been hibernating, barely coming out, the spring break and whatnot, not knowing what's going on. The summer gets out and about, and it's a lot easier to get out and about talking. So I agree.
Ditto. However, I was thinking the confusion part of it too, right? So can I vote in this election, but not this election? And I think that could turn into a logistics nightmare when it came to people there asking questions whether or not they can vote here, or because I voted on the last election, that was a month ago, can I vote now? So I think, and saving the world was like $15,000 or so. Sounds like a better deal.
Or anyone else has any comments? Pro or con?
I guess my only opposition to the August election would be that if we could get it done in May, it would be less political, the side and we would actually be local, the locale itself, and we'll hopefully take a little bit of the primary voters now, at least that.
Commissioner Hoff, that's an excellent news.
And then it's my understanding then that we don't have to decide tonight, that we're considering both options and each has their potential benefits. And Commissioner Hoff, I also think the nice thing about having it separate is that it does remove the primary politics from it. And the community has an opportunity to address it on its own. So I think we can continue to weigh those options.
Yes, John.
I have a question. Isn't it more advantageous?
You guys do grow.
My question is, isn't it more advantageous to do it sooner rather than later so that we can start collecting this money? I just feel like we're looking for money, and the sooner we get it, the sooner it can be put to good use for the city, the county, and Rock River.
Great comment, thank you. Yes, you go ahead. My question is just a clarification, but it's somewhat related to Jones. And that is, I thought that the collection of the money was projected to end in May of 2026. So then that's a big question with Joan, like, does that then put people who are assessing the tax in a difficult position? I couldn't remember what you said about the quarters and how that works.
Can I give this one, if I understand everything correctly, it will continue, it's collected through May, it will continue until the end of the second quarter, which would be July 1st. And we already have a voted measure that it would continue to be collected after that date, and there would be no gap.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think that issue definitely also a factor.
I think it's always really nice to not have a gap. And I was working retail at the time and we did have the gap. And yes, indeed, that was not very challenging. Yes, please.
Just a comment, but if we do decide to choose May or August, I wonder what other initiatives we can do from the county and city and the town of Rock River to get the information out, maybe differently than before if it's a shorter timeline, to try to relieve the concerns that the public doesn't know what's going on. And so I'm sure we could put our heads together to try to do more than traditionally what we would do if it's a timeline just about.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Back here. Kayla, did you say when we have to know this date? Do we have, Kayla, do we know when do you have to know the answer to this question?
So we have to have our draft ballot language by December, early January. So I mean, we have to have our projects in place and everything well before the end of the year. So that means
bonding.
But we also need to then, there's
Well, before the end of this year.
yes,
Oh, yes. So we have to make this decision pretty soon,
yes.
next month or so.
Probably in the next month.
Thank you.
This question is probably more for Tracy. If there is a gap, have we estimated what that revenue loss would be? And would it be better to spend the $15,000 and do the election in May rather than wait?
No, I have, quite honestly, I haven't estimated what that revenue loss would be, but that revenue would still only be able to be used for those specific purposes because it is a 6 penny. So it's not like our county general fund would be short by that amount. Or city general fund or whatever.
I keep getting How long did negotiations take in 2018? When this happened, the last time?
About 2 hours.
Okay, never mind.
Just a clarifying question then, so it wouldn't be a matter with the money goes to what the money goes to from this last tax, so that doesn't matter. So it's just a matter of how soon can we pick it up to start it again. So we wouldn't technically, we'd be losing that chunk to the gentleman's point. Or just kind of pushing that out. Yes, that I'm kind of going back and forth between this education of the public, the politics side of things, and then the time needed for staff to actually pull all of this together, which does seem like a pretty heavy lift. So I don't have an answer yet. I think that's what that's thinking about.
So Darren, to answer your question, it's about $200,000. That's a loss of 1 cent over the quarter. If I did my math right.
Commissioner Hoff, that is way too low. Yeah.
Is it per month? I can't remember.
We collect approximately $500,000 a month in specific.
Then never mind, Darren. That gets a whole lot closer. Maybe I was just doing the county for
Stephen, when we did the last tax, there wasn't social media like there is today. And so I think a lot of the education would go out on social media, which would be very helpful.
It's hard to believe.
No, what?
Close hard in the mail, every, bulk mailing.
Right, yes, both men.
Gotcha. But the cities, I remember last time around, you couldn't pay for the advertising, is that correct? It would have to be a separate entity that says that?
You are correct.
We can't spend money on it.
Usually there's a pact that's formed, somebody forms a pact in order to get that information out. Todd has some information over here, and I have it in Jackie's old book, and I didn't bring it. But there is a lot of information, but there usually is a pact that's formed that does all of the pushing of that information out.
Madam Chair, I might clarify. Governmental entities can spend money not on advertising, but education. And I think you have an obligation to tell voters what it is that you're proposing, the amounts that are proposed, what are these projects, when's the election, where do they vote? You just can't say vote yes on May 6th. But there's precedents out there of spending money on information only.
Oh, I just have a text, so I'm gonna relay this on. How come we don't wait till November to vote on this? How come, why wouldn't we wait till November to put this on the ballot? I guess that's my question.
Thank you, Councilor, for that question and your tax friend. The reason we don't is because we have the tourism tax, the lodging tax will be on the ballot, and the general option 5th penny will be on the ballot. So 3 taxes on the ballot might be a very lengthy ballot or overwhelming.
I believe the clerk is also concerned about the length of the ballot and how many pages it ends up being. It's real concern.
Yes, please.
Does Wyoming statute allow or prohibit incremental amounts of a penny tax, quarter, half, 3/4, up or down? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I believe that there is a provision that allows for an incremental. I believe it's 25 basis points is the increment in which you can allow for that. But I prefer that we look at statutes providing with you. And the most very answer. Historically, that has been able to be done.
Thank you, Jim. I was wondering, so all those projects we had on our ballot that was like 14 feet long last time, are they all complete? I bet they're not, right? Because we put so many streets on the ballot. But I guess that's a question for the city, or the county. Did you accomplish all of the things that were on the ballot the last time, or will you?
I don't think all the streets were on ballot, so every project was a street. I believe it was so that any street in the city couldn't be excluded. What was spending now?
Madam Chair, me to answer that. We were informed by bond council, the city was, that in order for any street project to be eligible for the use of sped tax, it must be stated on the ballot. So Jim's predecessor and I went through a laborious, lengthy, weeks-long process with the county and with bond council to try to identify and name every single street in the city of Laramie. And we learned, I think, 8 months ago, Jen, that we missed a couple. So we will have to list them all out. And I think that was a lot of the reason the ballot was so late. That was new with the 2018 tax. We've not been asked to provide such specificity in the previous 2 iterations.
And Madam Chair, I can clarify for the county on our projects that since the county did take the Laramie Regional Airport under our wings and we bonded, that project is complete. We do have some continuing needs that there will be an overpayment that will be able to be applied to that. Most of the other projects that were on the ballot have been completed with the exception of some of the roads. Bluebird Road is on there, Hollow Lane, Vista Drive, Grand Avenue, Palmer Canyon, and Hanson Lane, or Soldier Springs is on there as well. Those, because the county chose to carry the bonding for Laramie Regional Airport, that left a lower bonding capacity for the county to do that. So we've been collecting those monies incrementally, and they should be available in their entirety once the tax is collected.
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe this question is for Todd, and I really appreciate your presentation. The last few times that we've done the special tax, do we always bond? Do these entities always bond because there's projects that make sense to you, or are there times that the rate's so high, or for certain projects we never bond? And, just maybe understanding the history of that and as we move forward.
So usually that decision is formed by the respective governing bodies on what they feel the most urgent needs are for those projects. And it's not something that I identify by any means. It's what they bring forward as the most critical to get funded right away. Typically, we always provide that language in there that would allow them that flexibility to do so if they wanted to. I'm trying to think back. I believe all three entities have financed their projects over the last 3 issues. They're just going from memory. Not necessarily 100% of all the projects that were listed on the ballot, but a portion thereof for each project.
Got one more question. Can anybody remind us, and to your point of now we do have social media, which is another tool, but what is the shortest amount of time that we have advertised one of these? Again, in thinking about the timeline, we were going to May, that still feels real tight to me, but maybe it's been done before, and also losing out on the big chunk, which Joan mentioned. I don't love that idea, but I just want to try to go into this with the most realistic view of getting the word out and advertising for this.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. I think 2018, in my experience, I've been through 2010 and 2018, and 2018 felt super rushed. Definitely on the county behalf. I feel like the city came into that one a little more prepared than we were, and also the town of Rock River, but I feel 2018, we were signing and having those final negotiation meetings in March of 2018? Yes. March 28th, kind of, in that neighborhood of 2018, to get that on the ballot in August. And I do not recall meetings prior to March. So I think that was a very quick turnaround. I can't speak for election language, but then I think there have been some statutory changes in timelines for notifications, maybe since then. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, question. So next year, then we would have, I'd say we had been, thank you. So we had been, okay. Now, we would have 3 elections next year, that's correct? Have we historically done that before, where people come out with 3 elections, or when they think, oh, I've already voted in May, I don't need to go and can't? I mean, that's something to consider.
I believe 2010 was an election year in the same cycle. So that 2010 tax was passed in May, and then we moved on to the August primary, and then of course the general election in November. What the turnouts were, I couldn't tell you because that's definitely not in my wheelhouse.
Well, I think that we could answer those questions if Kayla was given some time and at the next meeting, get together to continue the work session, that maybe you could have those answers, Kayla?
Actually, Todd has the numbers for 2010. Looks like 3,257 people voted for and 1,177 voted against. So, I don't know how many undervotes that was or how many overvotes, but and that's a pretty good turnout.
What election was that?
That was in 2010.
I mean, with the November or the August?
It was by itself. It was a March or May special election.
Kayla, could you repeat how many voted in that?
3,257 voted for the tax and 1,177 voted against. And I can gather all of the election data and I can send it out to council and Town of Rock River and commissioners. I can get that ready tomorrow and I'll send it out to everybody so you guys have all that information.
Thank you very much. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I would love to be able to see those old ballots because, as I recall, it was a whole bunch of streets. And that would help us, I think, to design the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. What I'll do is I'll send a copy of all of the ballots with all of the statistics for all of those elections that have passed.
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you, Kayla. So, are there any other questions or comments? Yes.
I guess one of my questions is kind of how we proceed now. And do we schedule our next meeting? And would it be at the next meeting that we begin to establish the collection amount that we're going to do?
I think we need to set our next meeting and that'll give, Tracy and Kayla time to get everything together for the questions. So, I don't know, how do you want to set the next meeting?
I have a couple more questions. Would it make sense that this is hypothetical? I've never been through this, so please set me straight. But would it make sense to try to come up with that number tonight so that we can, we have not set out our priorities yet. And from my perspective, having that number, at least ballpark, at least about, between X and X amount, so we can think about what our planning is for each of our projects. I don't know how others feel, but I would love to have that kind of worked out at least somewhat tonight so that we can begin to move forward with a formal, solid plan.
Thank you. Tracy and Kayla,
I would agree. I think it'd be helpful if you guys set your amount. And then at the next meeting, we can come back and start talking about projects.
Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Jones. I think also it bears a discussion about which election we're going to be in, because if it's May, we need to get those priorities fairly soon. It's the end of August. If it's August, then we have a bit more time. But if it's May, we're 9 months out without any plan at all. So you would have to, in my mind, have something done by the end of October. I would guess at least most of the way there. It would seem to get it in front of people in enough time. Thank you.
I know we can't vote at these meetings because it's a work session, but I personally like Director Wade's estimate of the first one, it's a conservative estimate of around 86 million. And I also know I'm convinced that May is a better idea than maybe we could close the dry run and the new voting center. Maybe that's the way to look at it. Thank you.
I guess my concern is the county and the city are probably approaching this from different standpoints, where the county's already figured out the list of priorities and assigned the cost to each one, and the city's actually working in the opposite way. So I think we're going to need to figure out how to mesh that so that numbers, and I don't know if the city often didn't have a list of priorities or a tally on what the project cost would be, and is there any way to get an estimate that we have city would be looking at, and also the town record.
We have reviewed priorities. We recognize that these are very challenging financial times right now, with financial uncertainty in many sectors nationally. And so we recognize that we are aware of your priorities and what you said, and recognize the urgent needs, the critical needs that are there. And so we're wanting to work to create something where these critical infrastructure needs can be met. And I think right now, if we had everything we wanted, it would be $100 million, but we can't really go there. And so I think we come in, at about 45 right now, without negotiation. And if we could come in close to that, there's a lot we could do. And we recognize that the way it's been distributed in other years, that things may need to be different this year. And so we're willing to really negotiate with that for the betterment of our greater community, both county and. So
That wasn't, I just,
if we could
just trying to find a way to get.
if we could get 65, it would be really nice. If we can, then we're looking to do some of the things you all have done is scale to move some other things, but to prioritize some of the critical infrastructure needs that both of us need to keep our operations going and to create a solid operations environment to move forward. So
My thinking is that the next meeting would be in a short, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that allows you guys in the city and possibly Rockford to work on what they want. And then we're going to talk about it. And until we kind of know what we think, I don't know, is setting an amount right now is, I think we need to know kind of what the needs are for 47 and out.
I agree with you, Chair, that it would help us to have an idea of what the amount is, and then I think we can do some really serious prioritizing and Councilor Newman.
That's kind of where I was gonna go, because we haven't prioritized anything. We got a list of like recommended projects and discussed it for a little bit, and then counselors, I think, have emailed in some other ones. So just as council, I think maybe even before we get a number would help, don't get me wrong, but we as council need to have time to sit down before we meet again to prioritize and put a list together, because currently it's what we $1 million that was projected, but we haven't truly talked about, do we want XYZ or do we want ABC or a mixture of? So kind of to Councilor Hoff's, we kind of are working backwards because we don't have a number right now, and we don't know how to prioritize with our projects because of that.
Just looking at, Chair Jones, looking at our schedule on, we have a work session tomorrow. Is it right? No. Yeah, we have a work session tomorrow, and then we have a regular meeting on September the 2nd. Then our next regular meeting would be September 16th.
So and I don't want this to sound, okay, but we're in a way, we're kind of ahead of you.
I know.
On that. And so I think that it would be good for you guys to figure out when the time is that you want to have the next meeting, and we'll certainly try to accommodate that.
And I would like some input from our staff about how you think we can get our work done so we come to the table as prepared as you are, in that same kind of setting. And I think we've looked at priorities, we've looked at possible projects. It certainly exceeds, the projects that we can do exceed reasonable ask. And so we're at a point where, depending on what, we needed to know what the needs of the county are, and we know that now, and we can begin to tailor ours toward an acceptable collection ask.
Just one more, I guess where I think would be helpful, yes, we need to get our list together and share that as well. But I think also if we can, so if it's like, oh, we're not gonna collect a tax that's more than last time, let's say it's, whatever, 63 million, then that's, like, we got nothing to do, right? So I think if we can at least have a ballpark of where we're kind of landing so that we can take those, because we have far more, we have a list of things that would far exceed, as you guys probably did too, right? That we're going to have to negotiate down. But can we say, we are willing to land between 80 and 90 million or 85 and 95 million. So then, and that's not necessarily like that is where we will land for sure. But just kind of a ballpark, so that we can then, work backward with our list and determine what fits into this 85, knowing that you have 45, and that there'll be negotiations both ways. I think that's where I think it would be really helpful to narrow things down for us, and then we come back next time and start to kind of work through things a little bit more.
All right.
Yes.
Making sure, I think that's great, we just need a starting point. Otherwise they're just gonna go with, let's just throw out a number there that we can, kind of agree on. Let's say it's $90 million, and we just start working backwards. Is all we have to do, and it doesn't mean that's what we're gonna end up at, but how about we do it? Let's just start with a number and give us, so we don't wonder what we're gonna talk about in the next meeting.
Jody?
Yeah, this is CJ Mayor. I've done a few of these before, and it always seemed easier, like at our next meeting, everybody get their stuff together, because Rock River's ready to go. We have our prioritized list and everything, so we're ready to go. But if you start out, I don't know how you can start out with a number if you don't know what the county or the city of Laramie wants to put in there. If you do that, you might as well start at 200 million. So I think you should get all your stuff together, and then we have another meeting within 1 to 2 weeks, and then we decide the election date and the amount we're going to go for in the years. That's just my thought. Thank you.
CJ, would you mind answering this question? I have a pretty good idea. What is your ask for this monetarily?
$1,350,000.
Did you say 1.3?
Yeah. Yes, and no bonding. We will not be bonding projects.
Thank you.
And just keep in mind that is like 1.4% of whatever you guys decide.
Thank you.
Well, I just think it would be helpful if we understand if we're going to adjust for inflation. And so are we looking at similar amounts to the past adjusted for inflation? Are we looking at 80, 85? I mean, just around that, because we're going to have to, the needs that we have that fit this specific tax far exceed any ability to do that. So we've really got to make some choices, and we've got to prioritize by some of the infrastructure needs and the need for citizen tax relief in other areas. So I just need to know, is it going to be restricted to 6.5? Are we going to 8.5? Are we going to adjust for inflation? Are we willing to think about it? Councilor Leffer?
Thank you, Mayor. Now, so I lost my train of thought. Well, can we just come up with projects, find out what it's gonna cost us, and we're not gonna negotiate the next meeting. So we could at least have a starting point. Let's get our projects in mind, figure out what they're gonna be. You guys have your projects, Rock River has their projects, and then we have a starting point. And then we start going, how are we gonna negotiate here? What are we gonna give up here? And, you know, what's on priority this time or whatever, you know, just a starting point. So I'm hopeful for it.
That's where I was coming from, so.
I can give you that number, 175 million. The county commissioners, before they negotiated with themselves, asked for 71 million. We asked for about 100. They asked for about 2.
Actually, I had duplicate jobs on.
Oh, okay.
It does have some.
So that's, yeah, 150 million. Before we negotiate with ourselves and before we figure out how much the county really wants, how much. So if we add it up, it's about 150 million.
And I guess
then from there,
yeah. And so that's kind of where I'm like, are we willing to go to 89 or 90 million as a group so we can kind of work back if we know that our needs would be 150 million? And maybe that's something we need to work through as a council to find out what number we'd be comfortable with, which I'm happy to do, but then we also need buy-in from you all. Don't think you're okay with that. Because when I look at this personally, I see that second amount that's the same amount that we collected 2020 times that 2.3 inflation to the 89 million. That feels pretty reasonable. If we're getting the same amount and then we're putting the inflation dollar on it. So I'm comfortable with that. I would just love to know if Rock River and if the county is, at least right now, initial conversation, comfortable with the number that's that much higher than it was last time. That's a lot higher than it was last time.
I thought that Councilman Lockhart's number of 90 is just a good place to start. And then we'll all have to feel the potato. Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you. I think that makes it feel a little better about like what are we, at least ballpark what we're looking at. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just don't want to insult the electorate by saying, we want $90 million of your money, and here's how we're going to take it. I would like to be able to present projects and say, here's how we arrived at that number, here's where we came up with it, and we're not here to insult you, but the community needs this, this, and this.
I appreciate that comment. And what I would see, the 90 million is not the ask, but the cap. It's kind of like a cap, you know, that, like Councilman Newman said, we could go to 150 and still not meet the needs of the community. So that gives us a ballpark. And it's not saying it is that, but it's a number around which we can, yeah.
Does that allow city and staff to work around?
And based on city manager's office, based on our schedule and timeline, when do you think we can be ready? As soon as possible in September, can we?
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Chair to you, I think that myself and Director Wade, City Manager Jordan are willing to meet at the speed of what you guys want to meet. You know, it's going to take probably an extra meeting or a special meeting of some sort, but we're absolutely willing to do this at the pace that you need to do that.
Okay. And so
September 8th, that's what I just heard. That's the suits. Obviously, we can't look at that. Like, we're kind of running out of time, so we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to do either like an 8th or a 10th or, you know, another, kind of like we have this week, 2 work sessions. We're going to have to do something like that because if not, then we are going to have to postpone the election because we're not ready.
I agree.
Commissioner Butler?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Chairman. I think it bears understanding that visitors pay part of this tax, and I think that needs to be addressed. And then wind purchases are not going to happen forever, and the sooner we get at that, the sooner the taxes are collected and those projects are put into real projects. And for me, I believe it's what type of communities do you want to invest in, and that outside people that come and enjoy our communities get to help us pay for the infrastructure. And I think that's how I view it. And so thank you very much.
Mayor, if I could, for this. The city council's, just information, you have planning commission meeting, September 8th at 4:30. So if we set a meeting for the 8th, we might look at 6:30 for a start time instead of 6, just to allow them to finish in adequate time. And
do we need, so that would be for a work session, an extra work session? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Councilor Shumway it would probably have to be a special meeting so we can vote on the priorities.
That's my question.
Instead of a work session, right?
special meeting.
I would suggest a work session and a special meeting to follow. You could do it the same night.
Same night.
Split it apart by a week or so, because we can just take direction on the work session. Sorry.
So then I'll just finish and then we'll go there. We'll plan a work session followed by a special meeting where we can we'll go over priorities and then we will vote. And that would be on the 8th.
No.
Here's that one. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, this is CJ, again, that is our regular council meeting night. Can we set it for a different night?
Thank you. CJ, that would only be for the Laramie City Council, and it would be an extra work session for us to go over our priorities, and followed by a special meeting so we could vote on those and be ready to move forward after the 8th.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought maybe you were setting a meeting for more discussion with everybody.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So what day would we want to set a work session for the joint work session for Rock River, Laramie, and Albany County?
Would we want to do that following week, the week of the 15th? Okay. And do you all prefer Monday or Wednesday?
Why not just keep them on the same day?
On the Mondays?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just maybe keep it some
That's okay with me. Rock River, does Monday work for you?
On the 15th.
Is that the 15th, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, at what time?
6.
And Rock River normally gets to have a meeting out here so our constituents can be involved as well. So I just want to kind of keep that in mind, that we'd like to have a public meeting out here as well.
I would think that would be a good time to meet out there. We might not have a snowstorm coming and going.
Oh, you never know.
You never know.
That's for sure.
So we can certainly do that.
So this is an actual meeting. This is not a workshop you're talking about, right? Is this where we're deciding stuff or just going through our negotiations?
There'll be a lot of discussion and perhaps negotiation, but I mean, we're not down to brass tacks by any means.
Okay, well then I don't know if we want it public until we've kind of got decided what everybody wants and such.
Okay, so then we can have it here where we'll get everything on the table and we'll begin negotiation, and that'll give us an idea about how quickly we're gonna move, maybe.
There enough room No, is there enough room in the county, since we've already done one meeting here? Can we go to your building and then one at Rock River, so now we went to
If the crowd's getting larger, we can certainly go to the fairgrounds. We'll just need to do the schedule, or we can go to the district court.
One count.
I thought, even if there was go to all three.
I'm open, whatever. Fair, but we need to also think about broadcasting and what's available. So I think I would take some, as we work toward the location, maybe we take some input from our clerks about what all is involved in making sure these meetings go smoothly and get connected and things like that.
I mean, we have the ability to do Zoom at the county. Our room is a little bit smaller. We might be close. I mean, we could probably make it work. I don't know if the commissioners have an issue as to where the meeting is. It doesn't matter to me where they're at, to be honest with you, but I'm not the board, so I'll let them make that decision as to where they would like it.
I would like them to be comfortable where the public can attend.
We're in the county right now.
My point was, some people can't travel out here, so if we could have one kind of in the town a little bit, or something to that effect. Because I think we would have more people show up, just my opinion, like, I don't care either.
So Rock River, did you not want to have the one on the 15th? Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you want to do public?
Well, that'd be best because they're all going to be negotiation meetings. All the meetings are going to be, so.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do a public meeting on the 15th out here if that works for everybody. Then you can get us away and you don't have to travel out here in the winter.
Yeah. Okay, so,
I think that's what she said.
yeah, so am I understanding it correctly that yes, you would be willing to host the meeting on the 15th of September?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, okay.
Sure, so I just have one question.
Yes, please.
Thank you. For the 15th, do you, or Mayor Leslie, do you have adequate Wi-Fi or internet access out there that we could connect our computers for?
I believe the county can run the facility.
Yes, we do, and we have indoor restrooms as well.
Well, I figured your answer was going to be yes, but I thought I'd just double check. Thank you.
But if you felt that need, you could have porta potties brought in just in case someone needed any comfort.
Work.
You know I'm teasing you. All right, so we're gonna have it on at September 15th, Rock River at 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.
Is there anyone that does not work for? Okay, looks like September 15th, Rock River at 6 p.m. Looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Can I just make one more comment before we go? So our last work session for the city talked about the priorities of the general priorities of the staff. And if people are interested in seeing what those were, they are welcome to see those. And staff submitted those, so obviously have a budget item in mind. We just haven't gone over those, but you can access those. And we can email you a list of what those, or the presentation if anyone's interested. We're happy to share those.
Would you like to introduce? And the shoes are okay. But then we can look at what we made. Yeah, because there are issues, everything.
Is there any other discussion for this evening? I don't see anyone. See everybody. See no one. All right, I think the workshop is fun. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.